Well, let us speak a little bit about the Parsha. We are in the middle of Sffirass. We started Sffirass of Imer. And the Parsha, this Parsha also has the mitzvah of Sffirass. And we all know the mitzvah of Sffirass simply consists of the requirement of counting each day, each passing day from Pesach, from the second day of Pesach. They count 49 days, and then the 50th day becomes Sffirass. It's brought down that this inyan of counting the days between Pesach and Sffirass actually begun by the Eden themselves. The Eden themselves started it. When they left Mitzrayim, so they were told by Moshe that they are going to receive the Torah at the end of a certain number of days. So they started counting the days because they were very anxious to reach that point. So they started counting the days. That was a reflection of the union of Sffirass or Imer. The Sffira, the counting in other words, was something, yes, it expressed their anxiety, anticipation, but also this anticipation was not, and anxiety was not just merely their anticipation, but it had a profound effect on them. Deep. Because when Eden left Mitzrayim, they were steeped and sunk deep down in Klippa, and then they had to be torn out and jump out of it. But this was merely a superficial breakout. Broke away from Mitzrayim, sort of on a physical boundary. But in terms of themselves, to be able to receive a Torah, which we'll speak about in a few minutes, to be able to receive the Torah at any level, they needed to internalize. They needed to go through a personal, internal purification. And this is the process of counting the days. In other words, in simple terms, we'll start from the bottom up. A person is counting a certain number of days in order to get to where he needs to get. That itself implies to him, that itself makes him aware that this which he is going towards, which he's trying to accomplish, is not something that he is at this moment ready to receive it. He needs to go through a process. And how long is this process? So he's counting. One day, a second day. Each one of these days, he's getting further away from Mitzrayim. Not geographically, further away from his experience in Mitzrayim. And he's cleansing it all, washing away the dirt that's stuck to him. And how many days do you count? A total of 49 days. In other words, there are 49 different steps, cleansing stages that one has to go through. cleansing, cleaning, to come from Mitzrayim and to receive the Torah. We know that these 49 days, actually, this number 49 represents a full complement of all the midas, of all the Sffirass. You know what complement means? A full conjugation, a full set. Because there are 7 Sffirass, and each one of the 7 is further enhanced, enriched by its content, that it contains all the other 7. Each one of the Sffirass is a complete entity that has 7 qualities to it, and together, therefore, they constitute. This is 49, and each day relates to one of these sub-Sffirass, Chesed shebechesed, Gvura shebechesed, and so forth. The concept of counting the days and saying this is Chesed shebechesed, Gvura shebechesed, this is, and we call it cleansing and cleaning, but actually, more precisely, this is called birur. It's called birur hamidas. The word birur means clarifying. To clearly identify something is called birur, like boirer on Shabbos. Boirer, you boirer one from the other. The idea of birur hamidos even though midos come from seichel. Those who learn, everybody knows, even in Tanya, that midos come from seichel. So one would ask, why do you need birur hamidos? If you have a clear seichel, then the seichel directs your midos. But that is not how it exactly happens. Because what actually happens, midos is more the natural part of the person. So that even if his seichel, he understands that things have to be in a certain way, he has a natural inclination coming from his nefesh habahamis. And in order to have the seichel affect the midah, you actually have to identify the midah. And you have to identify the midah in a very borur, in a very clear manner. How clear? So clear that it's not enough to say chesed. You have to have a gedusha de chesed, or gevura or tiferes. You have to break it down into minute detail. In order that it should take effect, it has to be broken down into smallest particles. Then it can affect the person. Then it can be cleansed. There is.
I don't understand this. What you should broke the midah?
Break is an expression. It means identify the midah. Identify explain the meter at the smallest detail. At the smallest detail. In other words, not to say in general. This is the yeshiva building, right? That's in general. This is the Beis Medrash. That's specific. You understand? Midas have to be identified very specifically. And a person has to relate, has to think of them as small a particle as possible in order for him to actually get hold of it and make a little change. You can't make a big change. You make a big change, it doesn't happen. When does it happen? Really, when you identify it very specifically. And once, in discussing this principle, I gave the following illustration. We have a doctor here. When a person eats food, we discussed it, I think, many times. A person eats food. The food that he eats is not all healthy. A great part of it, the body throws out because it's not helpful to the health of the person. There are certain ingredients, certain minerals and vitamins that are beneficial to the body. And these have to be extracted from the food. And they have to be extracted in such pure fashion, very, very precisely. And if it's not precisely extracted, and that gets mixed into your blood, then it becomes food poisoning. Then it's counterproductive. It has to be extracted exactly in a purest fashion. And the rest gets thrown out. If any of that gets thrown out, gets mixed into the bloodstream of the person, then it's a sakana. Then he gets sick. And then that which is extracted becomes so refined, so pure, that the body accepts it. It accepts it when it does not recognize it as a foreign body anymore. In other words, if you put something that is a foreign body, the body rejects. You know what rejects means? It does not, it's foreign, it's an intruder. When does it accept the food? When it becomes so refined that it is no longer a foreign entity, it becomes right one thing with the body. Then it accepts it. And it's an interesting phenomenon that normally when you put food into your mouth, it goes through the food pipe. It stays isolated, segregated from the rest of the body. It goes through this whole process, the food pipe and the intestines and all that. That part of the food that is accepted by the body, that is refined and purified, that goes through the membrane, goes right through. It doesn't go through a pipe into the blood. It goes right through the membrane and gets accepted by the body. That's how fine it has to be in order for the body to accept it. But it goes right through the body. Correct, doctor? The same thing is in Ruchnius. When a person learns something, a person wants to affect something in his midas, and he says, oh, I'm going to do such and such. It's never going to happen. He can force himself one day, a second day, and a third day, but it's still a foreign thing. He has to really think it through and identify it in such a fine way that it becomes part of his mind, part of his heart.
Is it possible since the beginning?
I'm sorry?
Is it possible since the beginning?
I'm sorry.
Is say what you make this.
If
When the person is begin the peule, this in such a way, understand? I will change my peule in this point specific, understand that there is a Sffirass, and block the Sffirass or this. But when I need to change it one time, the first time that I change this peule, it's very difficult that I won't make this. Understand? It's very, like you say that you need refine this part, okay, in such Sffirass, such a way.
let me explain to you. I don't understand exactly, you know.
You say this is when the person make this, okay, but the person in truth will not take any change himself for this. The person will change this. This is possible when the person make the such peule that change for the first time. I make the peule for the first time because I change, like eat kosher. I was eating the taref before. Okay, now I change. But I can understand very good what is kosher in previous until okay I study this the Indian or this.
Yeah, let me explain to you what I mean. Okay. Take the example that you mentioned. I'm going to eat kosher. I'm going to eat kosher. Why am I going to eat kosher? Because my rabbi said to me I should eat kosher. Okay? That will make it very difficult because you did not really think it through and understand what you're trying to do. When you think it through and you say, I'm going to eat kosher because I'm Jewish, and this is what a Jew is supposed to do. And what is a Jew? A Jew is a nation that was chosen by God and they got the Torah. In other words, if you get down to the real meaning of it, then it becomes part of you. My rabbi told me to eat kosher. So that's something which is external, separate. But if you say kosher is a Jewish thing and I'm Jewish, that's a different thing. Then you can accept it. So that's the meaning that you have to break it down into details so that it's accepted, absorbed in your system. The same thing is in Midas. You talk about to be kind, you have to think, oh, I'm going to be kind because it's a nice way to behave. It's not going to work. You have to understand what kindness is. And you have to be able to relate personally as a human being to that quality. You have to think it through and digest it until you see a personal relationship to this. That's when it's going to permeate and go through the membrane, go right into your system. This is the meaning of chesed shebechesed, gevura shebechesed, because the word chesed itself is very big. But when you break it down into subtitles, then you can relate to them in a way that you feel a personal relationship to it. And that's how you can be mevarer and clarify your midas. And this is the concept of counting the omer. Just as an aside, that we know that the omer, everybody knows that the omer was a korban of a mincha, from flour, that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash on the Mizbeach. And this flour was from barley flour. It was not from wheat flour, which normally all korbanos are from wheat. And this is from barley. What's the difference between wheat and barley? So in Torah we know that wheat is human food and barley is animal food. Because at this time, the Yetzer Hara, the Nefesh Habamis, has not yet been purified. So at this time, the korban is from barley. You make a korban, which means you are going to now purify your Nefesh Habamis and prepare it for receiving the Torah. You start with a korban, you start with a bang, you bring a korban, and then you go through and count 49 days to work it out and to purify it. And here there is an interesting thing, the Rebbe explains in the Sikha, that even though we count 49 days, there's 7 times 7, in the Torah actually it says that you should count 50 days. Tispuru chamishim yom. You say it every day in Sffirass. That's a pasuk. Tispuru chamishim yom. So how come it says you should count 50 days when you count actually 49 days? So the simple explanation is that you count 49 days and then you get the 50th day. But still, the 50th day comes by itself. You don't count it. How is this? What is the, so to speak, the perfect way of explaining this? Huh?
Count from Hashem.
The 50th day.
You don't count it.
You don't count it.
It just comes.
It just comes. It comes after the 49. But you don't count it. So it's explained that there are 50 gates of wisdom, Nun Chamishim and Chamishim Sha'arei Bina. But a human being in his own effort can only reach 49 gates. The 50th gate is something which is granted to him from above. If he is perfect, if he completes, and he goes through all the 49 steps, and he opens his mind and purifies his mind, then he is granted the 50th grade. That's the 50. Why, since it's granted to him, why is it called that you're counting the 50? And the answer for that is that even though it's granted, but since it is granted only as a result of your counting, so therefore it is attributed, it's considered like you accomplished it, even though it's actually granted to him. Because in fact, if not for the fact that you counted, if not the fact that you worked out your meters, it would be impossible for you to receive that gift, even though it's a gift, no matter. But you can't receive it unless you prepared yourself properly. So therefore, this is also, it also goes to your credit, so to speak, that you have the 50th gate, even though it was given to you. The 50th gate, the way it was in Mitzrayim, in the first time, the first year, that even counted 49 days, and on the 50th day was Matan Torah. In other words, this represents the giving of the Torah. And as we said, that even though you count, you do all the preparation, but the 50th gate itself is something that you cannot reach on your own at all. It's something that's given, Milmayla, that's granted. What is the pshat that it is granted? If you work 49 days and you purified your entire nefesh, and then afterwards it said, oh, you're now given a gift. What does it mean you're given a gift? You worked for it. The answer, of course, is that the gift that's being given is way above, and it's not in line with the other 49. What is the difference? The difference we will understand from the following illustration. Sometimes you're learning something, and as you're learning, you have a lot of questions. And as you ask the questions, you get answers. So as you're going through the process of learning, you have two things. You have what the text says. You have your questions, and you have answers. When you have an answer to a question, the answer does not eliminate the question. You know what eliminate means? Does not wipe away the question. It only answers it. In other words, you have two things. You have a question and an answer. Every question, when you have a question, that means that things are not so purely clear. It's a kasha. It's a difficulty. But I have an answer. Why is it like this? It seems to be contradictory. Oh, this is the answer. This is the answer. So you have a question and an answer. This is the entire process of 49 gates, is that you constantly have questions and answers. When, after you go through proper learning, and you learn the whole thing thoroughly, all of a sudden you realize that your questions were not questions in the first place. Not that you have a question and an answer. You reach a point where you realize that the questions wasn't a question. Right now, you have no question. Not only you have an answer, you have no question. It's like a person climbing up a mountain. So he goes one step after another. But once, when he reaches a certain height, he looks around and he sees a completely different panorama. He sees a completely different horizon, much wider. Now, that which before blocked his view doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't block it anymore. This is the process of counting 49, and then at the end of the 49, he is granted a view, an understanding that eliminates the question. He sees things from a higher perspective completely. Just to give you an illustration on a simple level. We, in our avodah, primarily, we are involved with our seichel, we're involved with our emunah, we're involved with our midas. But when it comes to worldly things, when it comes to I once spoke about, let's say, neatness and cleanliness, personal neatness and personal cleanliness. Cleanliness, clean, to be clean, and neat, to put things away in order. Like the Sffirass shouldn't be lying over the table. That is not part of the seichel. It's not part of the nefesh. This is something which is for convenience. This is part of the world. It's not part of the seichel. But the real truth is that when a person takes care of his gashmis, the setup, the ritzonis, that actually helps his seichel. It gives him a clarity and a cleanliness in his seichel as well. It's not just external. So at first it seems just taking away an obstacle, an external thing. But when he grows a little bit, like a child, you have to tell him, tie your shoes. Oh, I'm lazy, tie your shoes, tie your shoes. But then eventually he understands that it's absolutely, that's the right thing to do. Doesn't have to be told anymore. Can understand why it was needed to be told. This is the process of growth in a person. At first, when you're laboring, when you're working very hard. And every step is a struggle. Every step is, like I said, a kasha and a teretz. But after you go through 49 gates, all of a sudden, you surface above and you see a completely new view. And that which was a struggle yesterday doesn't even exist as a struggle today. This is the pshat, a gift. This is a gift from Milmayla, from Hashem. This is a gift Milmayla. Because this is not something which came through a person's logical process. This came through something which from a high, that is higher than a person's mind, than a person's own accomplishment. There is a saying from the Rakatchover Gaon. You heard of Rakatchover? The Rakatchover Gaon was a very big Gaon. And he learned Torah very, very deeply. And he was able to see the relationship in the Torah from every angle. So he once said that the Torah is so perfect that from the first letter in the Torah, Breishis, the base from Breishis, and the last letter of the Torah, which is the Lamed, the Inakol Yisrael, from the first letter in the Torah to the very last letter of the Torah, is one long word. You understand the concept? When you have many words, you can transposition. And it seems like it said the same thing. And then you have a question of why does it say like this? Maybe it should say like this. And you start giving answers. Oh, if it said like this, it would be this. But the question is there. It could have been differently. You have answers. But after you learn it to such a degree of clarity, he said it's one long word. In a word, you're not going to ask why are these letters, if that's the only way to express this word. They can't spell word O-R-D. Or R-O-D-W. You can't. It has to be word. And it's obvious. What?
What is mean that the Raksha will see the Torah in such in his level, I don't know, sure which is. In this level, he see the Torah all entire.
In what?
All entire, complete, in one
Right.
piece. In one piece. In such a level that he sees it.
Right, he said that the Torah, the way it's written, exactly, in the same order, with the same words, the same letters, exactly the way it is. That's the way it cannot be any other way. It's completely perfect. Like one word, huh?
I need to know which is see. And you don't know which is the way that he see, the Rabbi shall see. Because we know the Torah is the Chokmah of Hashem. Okay, it's perfect. We cannot change the Torah.
Of course not. No,
Okay,
when he understood it that way. Of course.
Creo now. He understands such a level that
That's right.
like he passed for Sefkanshelut and reach the Esser.
That's right. I mean, that's of course we know that it's perfect. The point is that we learn that it's perfect, but when we start learning it, we start asking questions. Why is this like this?
Now you have in details.
But he went above the questions. He said, there's no question, it's one word. How can you have a question how the word is written? There's only one way to write a word. So this is the level of perfection that a person gets, because this perfection is something which comes from a higher source than his own process of learning. And that's the 50th. Okay, this is given to him. And this is called Matan Torah, a gift. Matan Torah means a gift of Torah. Not that he learned and reached it. It's a gift of Torah. Now, there's an interesting thing by Sffirass. After the counting the 49 days, we have Shavuos. And Shavuos, normally we say the Shavuos is the day of Matan Torah, of the giving of the Torah. However, the truth is that Matan Torah and the Yom Tov Shavuos just coincide. It happened to coincide. But it's not necessarily so. It doesn't necessarily coincide. Coincide come together in the same day. Because Matan Torah was on the 6th day of Sivan, not on the 50th day after Pesach. In other words, it's not dependent on Pesach, it's dependent on the day of the month, the 6th day of Sivan. Sffirass Omer has to do 49 days after Pesach. Nothing to do with the day of the month. It could be the 6th, the 7th, the 5th, it could be any day of the month.
Pesach is that one.
What?
How it's possible?
How it's possible? Let me explain to you how it's possible. See, we have a calendar. Our calendar is preset. And the way our calendar is preset is that Nisan is a molay, which means it's 30 days. Like we have 2 days of Shchedesh. Sivan is a choser. Iyar is a choser. So the Rosh Chodesh Sivan is going to be 1 day. As a result of that, Vov Sivan is the same day as the 50th day after Pesach. You understand? But it's possible when the Eden made the Rosh Chodesh according to witnesses, not according to the calendar. So Nisan could have been 29 days. So if Nisan is 29 days, so the 49th day would be the 7th of Sivan, not the 6th. And if it's the 7th, it's not Matan Torah. Matan Torah is the 6th. You understand? And the same thing, it could be Iyar, could be a Molay, could be 2 days of Shchedesh Sivan, and then it would be the 5th day of Sivan. And then on top of that, there's another interesting phenomenon which is true even today. And that is, you know that there is an international dateline. Everybody knows what that is? No. International dateline is, there's a certain line in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that everybody agreed this to be the line that divides one day from the other. You know, because the day is 24 hours. But if the sun is moving, and it's now Monday, and the sun continues to move, it could continue to be Monday indefinitely. When does it become Tuesday? So there is a certain date line, a certain point, where this is called the date line. This is where one day separates from the other. And on that location, you could be 1 foot on this side of the line, 1 foot on this side of the line. This foot would be on Monday, and this foot would be on Tuesday. exactly the same time of the day, midday. This is Monday, midday, and this is Tuesday, midday. The boats that travel through that location, when they break the date line, the captain announces, "Hello, it is now Monday." Because you come now to that part of the world where it's Monday. In Australia, it's Tuesday, and here it's Monday. You understand? So now, let us say somebody who began counting Sffirass here, and then he flies across to Australia, which is on the other side of the date line, and by then it's already Tuesday. Which means that he counted only 48 days, but they counted already 49 days. Because they started counting a day before. So by them they counted 49 days. So the next day by them is Sffirass. By him, the next day is only the 49th day. What does he do? Huh? He comes back. So the din is that he has to make Sffirass a private Sffirass by himself a day after. Doesn't join with everybody. Everybody has their own Sffirass because they already counted 49 days. They're up to the 50th day. And he is not up to it yet.
So he can,
What does this tell us? See, the important thing of this is that this is a private, individual, a personal avodah. Every individual person counts on his own, and he gets the gift of the 50th. He can join this is not a national counting. This is an individual count. And everybody individually on his own has to go through this process. And he can join the rest of the people. Matan Torah is for all the Eden together. But the counting of the Sffirass on the 50th day is an individual basis. So what does this tell us? There are actually two Matan Torahs. Two levels of Matan Torah. There's a level of Matan Torah where all Eden are one, all Eden are together. This is what took place on Vov Sivan. And at that time, all Eden were together, and all Eden received it at the same time. And if one Eden would be missing, it couldn't be Matan Torah. Then there is also a Matan Torah, what's called a private, his personal Matan Torah. This depends on his own counting, on his own effort. And every individual Eid, every individual person gets that experience. This is what we explained before. That when a Yid learns, a Yid works on his midas and on his on understanding of Torah, he is given milmaila also a certain form of Matan Torah on a private individual basis. And this is called the 50th day after the count. Of the count. So that this brings back to us clearly that even though it seems to us that we're working very hard, and it's all, so to speak, in the work, but really there is a reward for this work. Just like there is 7 days in the week, 6 days are the days of work, and 7th day is something which Hashem has elevated the whole world, and took us out of the creation, took us above it. The same thing there is on a monthly cycle. There's a Chodesh, which is also in a separate level. And then there is on the yearly cycle. And then there is every individual Eid, every person has a cycle where where there is a period which is dependent on his effort. And on a daily basis, this is simply when a person gets up in the morning, he has to break the sleep, and has to break away out of his sleep, he will wake out of his state of non-activity. At first, it requires a big effort. It's breaking through his nature and so forth. And then he learns a little bit, and he goes to mikveh, and he davens. By the time he reaches Shemona Esrei, he's a different person. He's a different person. And that which he has a different person is not only what he has accomplished, but his effort. But actually, he reaches he's given a different perspective, a different inspiration. This is the process of life. We may not even be aware and realize it, but after a while, that we go through the process of learning in yeshiva, of doing anything, we turn around and we take a look what problems we had a month ago, what problems we had a half a year ago, and we say, this is a problem. Where will they come from? This is not a question to begin with. It's not a challenge. How foolish I was. How did this happen? This happened because he was given an inspiration, an insight that is way beyond what he can figure out on his own. In fact, this is actually a revelation from his own neshama, but it's a greater revelation from the neshama. The mashal for this process is, you have curtains hanging on the window, and the curtains are blocking the light of the sun. And you remove one curtain, a second curtain, and a third curtain. You remove 49 curtains. All of a sudden, the sunshine comes on. Did the curtain bring the sunshine? The curtain didn't bring the sunshine. Sunshine comes from something, from a big source of light, not from the curtain. But because you remove the curtain, you remove the obstacle, now you're allowing the light to come, a completely different light. This is on a continuous basis in a person's life, in Torah life. You're working. You're constantly fighting, so to speak, the obstacle, the hell of the Hester. But as you're breaking through little by little, chesed shebechesed, gevura shebechesed, you're breaking through all the obstacles, suddenly the real light from the neshama begins to shine. And then you see that these obstacles were just a facade. It's not the real thing. The real thing is the light itself. So, Rebbe should help each one of us, should count Sffirass successfully, because that's how the real light comes. Our job is to count the Sffirass. The granting of the 50th view, something which we can trust Hashem that is going to come. But our job is to count Sffirass properly, to deal with the subtitles, with the small aspect of our midas. Sometimes a person thinks, oh, if I had this, I would be a nice person. But he's not ready to work on it. Because to work on it, like I said before, it has to be small steps. Don't look for the big thing. Looking at the big thing is really an aspect of gaiva. The real thing, avoid, is not looking for the big thing, is looking to purify oneself. And that goes through small steps. And that brings the real purity. We should be matzliach, each one of us, that we should be able to rise from one set of 50 to another set of 50 and get a real light, a real bright view of Yiddishkeit. And then we go out and we illuminate the whole world and bring Mashiach.